So, welcome back to some of you, and to those who are joining for the first time, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you all here with us today. And I would like to just start off very quickly by introducing myself, though I think a lot of you know me. My name is Asha. I run Active Communication, which is a consulting business based out of Hong Kong. While our focus has been primarily in the field of L&D and talent development, we are also looking to expand into other areas of HR, primarily around looking at how we can work with creating strategic HR partnerships with organizations. And one of the things that I remember from my experience has been how because we work with people, we work with a lot of people related data. There is always a scope for us to become more, I would say, data driven. And we do have a lot of data that floats around in our system, right? It's not that we don't have the data, but a lot of the time that data comes to us from so many different areas and so many different sources that at times it probably becomes a little difficult for us to be able to bring all of them together, make coherent sense out of it, and to then look at how we can make more data driven decisions in the business. So that's one of the things that has really been important for me. In the past, I used to work a lot with, say, looking at suggesting talent management programs or looking at career development, things like that. And a lot of times, the question that would come back to me was, well, how can you back this up with actual data, hardcore data? And for me, it would be very difficult, especially because I'm not a very detail oriented person. So I used to struggle with how do I bring it all together? How do I spend all this time on it? So one of the things that we can looked at was how can we use this new exciting world of data sciences into making this happen. So coincidentally, then Prasad and I got talking about it, and we kind of started to work through this because Prasad's been working on this for a long time. So that brings me to introduce Prasad to all of you. Prasad is a consultant based out of Bangalore, India. He's got 20 plus years of experience in the fields of different levels of project management. He's done a lot of work on Six Sigma. He's black belt certified, and he's also been working a lot with workforce management. He did workforce planning for a long time, and he's also now working with data science. He calls himself a data scientist who works with data analytics, business planning, forecasting, and operations so that businesses can become more efficient, more effective. The first episode of this series of webinars we did, we basically looked at the benefits of how you can use data sciences in HR. And I know that the word data sciences can sound a little boring, a little, what is that all about? So, but we looked at how we can use that data, looked at how we can bring it all together right from the time we start to acquire talent to looking at how do we engage talent, how do we grow talent within our organization. And Prasad demonstrated this using his tool, which is called Catalyst. And he showed us how he has been working with Catalyst with one of his clients. For privacy purposes, we had to rename the client. So we called it Wayne Enterprises after Batman. But jokes aside, this is a company that is in the field of machine learning, and they basically are Shanghai based, but with businesses or with offices globally. And we looked at their data and we saw how Catalyst would work with their data. So, Prasad, welcome. And I know that you've got a very exciting topic to talk about today, which is called sentiment analysis. So, let's together talk a bit more about sentiment analysis. Before I get into it, I would also like to call on Kana. Kana, please, if you can come off show your face on the camera, come off mute, and say a quick hello.
Hi everyone, this is Carla from Active Communication. Just feel free to send, if you have any questions, just feel free to send a message on the chat box. Thank you.
And Kana will also keep an eye out on the questions in the chat box. So please do put your questions, your comments in the chat box, and we will keep looking at it, and we will come back towards talking about it at the end of the session today. So let me stop sharing this so I can have our videos up. And if any of you feels comfortable to come on video, please come on camera. Please do come on camera. It's like I said, this though we are recording it. If you feel uncomfortable about showing your face, that's completely up to you. So, Prasad, welcome back, and I would like to hear your thoughts about. First of all, you talked about something called sentiment analysis with us. So I would like to understand a bit more about sentiment analysis.
Sure. Thanks, Asha, for the introduction. Thanks for having me on this webinar, and good to meet all of you on the webinar. So sentiment analysis, as today what's happening in the world of business is that you have a lot of data. You're sitting on a veritable sea of data. Um, However, that data is not uniformly distributed across the organization. Um, Today, when I say data to a business leader, they automatically think of operations, right? That's a default setting. You talk about performance data, you talk about maybe financial data, how the company is doing, etc. But very little thought is given to people analytics. And on one hand, organizations say that people are the strength of the organization. On the other hand, they don't have the necessary data to back up decisions relating to people. Now, so when we thought more about this as to how do we quantify the data pertaining to people, we came across a lot of things. And one of the thing was how do we analyze the sentiment prevalent in an organization? You have your workforce interacting with each other through various means. It could be through social media, it could be through messaging, it could be through water cooler conversations, it could be through 360-degree feedback forms, it could be through exit interview forms, and so on and so forth. There's myriad ways of capturing this data. But then how do we quantify this data? How do we ascertain whether the workforce is generally happy, neutral, or not happy with the organization's culture? Now,
Mhm.
that exactly is what sentiment analysis is on. We take sentiment is based on semantics. So first we capture semantic data, which is nothing but the written text, and then we try and analyze what the sentiment is behind those semantics.
Okay, so let me see if I can summarize that. So we are not talking about uh, percentages, we're not talking about averages here, but we're actually talking about what the said word, the verbal word. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. See, in
So
simple terms, sentiment analysis is a technique that uses artificial intelligence to read and understand the emotion or opinion expressed in a workplace.
that's interesting. That is very, very interesting. So obviously, a lot of sentiments do come out because we have conversations, we have performance management conversations where people talk about things that makes them happy, things that make them frustrated with the business, things that make them unhappy or sad, or in other words, engagement. We see morale dipping, engagement dipping, but a lot of times we can't really go back and talk about that with any level of, I would say, um, you know, uh, go back and present it back, because it then becomes, oh, it was that one person who said it, or was it five people who said it? It doesn't become a pattern necessarily, right? So what you're saying now is there is a way of creating a pattern. There's a way of creating some kind of hardcore data from this kind of sentiment. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely right. So
Mm,
put yourself in the shoes of an HR leader, and you go up to your business leaders, maybe your VP or your CEO, and you say that, you know what, our attrition numbers for a particular period of time, a month or a quarter, is looking a little higher than usual, and obviously the question is going to be why. And today, most HR leaders struggle to answer that why. Is it because of overriding not so happy kind of a sentiment prevalent in the workforce, or is it because of some other reason which is extraneous to the organization? How do we quantify that?
mm,
That is something which we are trying to help my client Wayne Enterprises understand through this app that we have developed called the Catalyst.
mm. I think in a lot of organizations, the easiest response, and I'm not saying this with any disrespect to the HR function, but also because in exit interviews, for example, a lot of times when you say what are your primary reasons for leaving, the answer is maybe a better pay or a better designation, for example. So that may not necessarily capture the complete sentiment. We know
Very
that.
true.
We know that.
Yes.
We don't know how to then um, concretize that, for want of a better word, because we don't necessarily understand how to go underneath it. So how can data science help with that?
Well, the key to that is an effective data gathering. I mean, if your, for example, if your exit interview forms are designed in such a way to elicit uh, apple pie statements, motherhood apple pie statements saying that, hey, I'm just leaving for better opportunities. Is there a way to devise or to design your feedback forms in such a way that you elicit the emotion behind the sentiment behind the semantics?
Mm,
If starting from there, that is the keystone to success. So if we have an effective data gathering solution in place, then yes, we'll have a lot more bang for the buck when it comes to deciphering the real sentiment that's
mm.
prevalent.
Okay. So sentiment analysis is basically then to just take the semantics or the words and then g- gather the underlying patterns and start to make sense out of that. Okay. So when
Yes.
you think about sentiment analysis today, um, how can we look at the role of sentiment analysis in decision making, or how do we make sure that how can we quantify this role in decision making? I don't even know if I'm making sense right now with my question.
No, yes, I mean, yes, you do. That's a good question actually, because um, you know we need to be sure of what we're getting into before we start off with this entire initiative. So think about, let's step outside the HR domain for a minute. Think about brand monitoring. If a company wants to monitor what the people or what the consumers are talking about the particular brand, it could be anything. Um, you know, so sentiment analysis is used over here. It's used for customer feedback.
Mm,
It's used in market research. It's used in uh, and as I said earlier, it can be used to analyze what your workforce or what your customers or what any of your stakeholders are talking about. It could be your organization, it could be a particular product or a brand, it could be about another particular individual. I mean, again, that is kind of crossing the gray line over there in terms of how a sentiment analysis, which is so powerful, can be used or misused.
mm.
Uh, so there could be privacy concerns, but primarily what we are trying to say here is effective use of sentiment analysis can result in knowing exactly what your stakeholders are talking about.
Right. Got it. Got it. But how will we be able to track it, especially given the fact that we have multiple languages, we have cultural nuances. I know for a fact, person originally from India, now living in Hong Kong, I know that despite the fact that we all apparently speak English, we speak English very differently. So the nuances of just even that. So how do we then start to work through with those kind of complexities?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that is something which is still evolving as we speak. See, semantic analysis or or sentiment analysis is a very powerful tool, um, and it's getting evolved as we speak. So
Mm,
even now, yes, you're right. There could be different languages. There could be colloquialisms, things like negations, for example. If somebody were to use the word, "I am not happy with something."
mm,
So will this app take the word happy and go with, say, hey, this is positive,
mm.
or can it be trained to say that this is not happy is one word? You know,
Right.
so these kind of evolution is happening as we speak. And as far as languages are concerned, today we have apps that can train systems in particular languages.
Mm,
I know that there is a lot of work being happening. There's a lot of work happening right now in Mandarin.
mm,
That systems are being trained to analyze Mandarin text and to come up with the sentiment analysis accordingly. English is, of course, there. And yes, this is as I said, this is evolving. This is an ongoing work that's happening right now.
And maybe Catalyst can be at the cutting edge where it not only looks at Mandarin or English, but it looks at Chinglish, like Chinese English, or Hinglish, as in Indian English, or, because it's very different, isn't it? And then there is the added complexity of multi-generational speech as well. So sometimes I struggle with understanding what millennials are saying.
Very true.
They don't seem to be speaking English, in my opinion.
Very true. They have a language of their own. And
Yes.
yes, so there will be some challenges as we speak because there are two ways to approach this, right? From a technology perspective. One is you instruct the computers or you instruct the systems on certain rules. That's like giving a computer a dictionary of words and assigning scores to them. For example, happy, excitement, love, these get positive points, or sad, hate, terrible, these get negative points. And then the computer goes through those entire texts and assigns the scores accordingly and comes up with a final sentiment score. But a more evolved and a more scientific way to go about this, which is happening as we speak, is a machine learning approach. Now, this is a more advanced approach where you don't give the computer rules, but instead you feed the computer lots and lots and lots of examples. I'm talking of millions and billions of bytes of examples. And then the computer starts learning by itself. That is what artificial intelligence and machine learning is all about. But as I said, this takes time, right? Because it needs that many amount of input to be fed into the computer system. So if your question is about Catalyst being in that state right now, the answer would be no, because it is still in a rule-based system. But as and when we, as and when we feed it more and more information, this will evolve into a machine learning system by itself.
Right.
And yeah, Chinglish and a whole lot of other millennial languages will be applicable here as well.
Got it. Right. Let's I'm just also trying to think here, and I guess all of us know the answer to that. But what are the risks of ignoring sentiment analysis?
You will not know what's going on in your organization. You won't know really what your workforce is actually really thinking, right? I mean, you're all HR leaders here, and while I'm sure most of you have the pulse of what your respective organizations are going on is going on in your maybe your production floor or maybe your other teams. It's sometimes it could be a challenge as to what people are really thinking of, right? And when I go back to Wayne Enterprises, my client for whom this app was being developed, and when I think about that, this was a challenge that they faced. The HR leader, while the HR teams were on the floor actively working with the other departments, marketing and development and so on and so forth, it really was not a foolproof way of ascertaining whether a particular department is happy or people in a particular team are happy, whether they're facing a problem with a particular manager, whether they are what do they really think about the culture of the organization, right? Now, after having worked with them for quite some time, and after having developed this app and this app doing the necessary analysis, we are a lot more clearer in terms of what the sentiment is, what the prevailing sentiment is across Wayne Enterprises. And if I would be the first to admit that no, this may not be a 100% true to every individual in the organization. That's a 2,500 strength organization, so it may not apply to each and every of those 2,500 people. But then we can stay with surety that the data that we have is certainly actionable and it can be applicable in a lot of contexts.
So at least now they're not trying to throw darts in the dark room.
Very true.
Because one of the things, again, I just keep going back to my past when I was working full time in large organizations. And while my job has never been core HR, and I never really kind of worked with a complete HR focus, except for a very short period of time. Uh, I remember because when I used to talk to leaders about, for example, proposing these kind of soft skill training programs or these kind of managerial training programs, and the question would be, but why? Why is this important? And then when I would say, but this is what the people are saying, and it would go, oh, that's gossip. Or, how do you know that that's true for everybody? Or how do we know that this is more widespread than what you're saying? Because you couldn't have spoken to 800 people, right? And so I can definitely see how having a system where we can gather information like this and start to actually connect the dots, potentially look at patterns, and then talk with a lot more, I would say, conviction would definitely help somebody like me. Because like I said in the start of the session, I'm not a very detail oriented person, and I really struggle with having to go and create like masses of data from things that I'm hearing. I'm more of the kind who will say, this is what I'm hearing, this is what I'm very intuitive that way. So I think for a lot of people within the HR world who are like me, this is going to be a blessing. That's my gut feel again. So um,
And
let's.
and you're right. You're right. And let me just cut in there. Gut feel and intuition is something that we should not discount, right? I mean, it is through hard-won experience. But then just imagine if that intuition of yours were to be substantiated with data.
Yeah,
Wouldn't that be great?
yeah,
Or let's say if someone's intuition says something and the data says something else, then you
yeah,
at least have a starting point to investigate.
yeah,
Right. And that's exactly what happened with Wayne. When we can see that when I give the demo of this application, the the overarching sentiment in Wayne when it came to attrition was, hey, we have such a talented pool of workforce that they're being poached about the companies.
mm,
Um, and that was the gut feel and intuition of the HR leader who has 20 plus years of experience in this field. But the data says otherwise. And that gives a fantastic starting point to at
mm.
least have some kind of introspection as to, hang on, is everything the way that we expect it to be, or there is something else that needs to be investigated within the organization?
Got it. So shall we have a look at Catalyst?
Yeah, we
And for
can
the
certainly.
benefit of those of our friends who could not join us in the first webinar, maybe if you could just show a very quick demo of what you did last time and then come into sentiment analysis. That would be really helpful.
Sure. um, okay, so this company, as Asha said in the beginning, due to various NDA clauses, we cannot share the name of the organization, so we decided to give it a proxy name. We call it Wayne Enterprises. It is based in Shanghai. It is it's about a decade old, but they still work as a startup, and they are in the field of AI and machine learning, and large language models. That's what they develop. So they have a pretty focused skill set that they need in their organization, and so any attrition that they face is potentially serious because skill sets are at a premium in this particular domain. So they really spend a lot of time and effort and money in training people. And if they lose even a 1% of the workforce, it is considered as a huge cost to them, impact. So that being said, so Wayne Enterprises and I worked with Wayne Enterprises. My team and I worked with Wayne Enterprises with a view of trying to figure out as to what is going on. Why is there attrition in the organization in the first place? So uh, we needed to get data, and we found out that data was scattered all over the place. It was in silos, it was in legacy systems, pretty much in Excel and flat files. So first we had to, get it together, make sense of all the relational databases, the models, the modeling in the databases in the organization, and then build something that would make sense. And can I share the screen? Do I have the rights?
Yes, I think you do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the app. Now, again, allow me to digress just a bit here. Now, the app that you're seeing here uh, is not the live app that we have deployed in the client's place, again, due to various, confidentiality clauses. What you're seeing here is a sample of the app that is stored on my local disk. It looks exactly the same. It is not just the data is not populating on a, or rather, it's not refreshing on a real-time basis. That's the only difference. So one sec.
So
Okay.
what you're saying is that the app, when it is deployed at the client's place, it's real time, it changes. So it automatically takes the information in. Does somebody doesn't have to sit and again type information into here?
Correct. So any changes that are made in the backend databases automatically refreshes on the front end, the visuals that you see here.
Okay.
But as I said, this is a local database, so this data that you see is probably as updated as per last week. So this is as a recent data that we can get. Now, let me open the live report here. Live report here again is the app that we had shared during the last webinar, just to very quickly take you through what we had discussed. So this is basically the executive summary. What we gives you a helicopter view about what the company wants to see on a or the leadership wants to see on a regular basis. Headcount details, the global footprint here, what each center has in terms of their workforce, and their hiring plans. So and the size of this bubble here, this is interactive again. So I click on Shanghai, all these figures refresh to show you exactly what the numbers put into Shanghai are, for example. Similarly for Warsaw, see these numbers changing here. And it also shows a little bit about the engagement metrics here. Quickly going through this, talks about attrition. As I said, this was one of the focus areas of the organization. They had a annualized 30% attrition rate, and because of this very specific domain, the skills that are required, 30% is a huge drain on the resources. So that was one of the main areas that we had to address. We did a predictive forecasting in terms of what their attrition would look like over the next 12 months. And we broke down the attrition to uh, people leaving the organization and people leaving their roles for a higher role
Within the
within the organization. So people getting promoted would mean that their old role would have to be backfilled by someone else.
Got it.
So, right. So therefore, it's a positive and a negative churn.
Got it.
We also took a look at their talent acquisition pipelines. We went into a little bit depth about what is the cost of acquisition for each of the pipeline, and where is the bigger bang for the buck that they are getting. Whether are they getting more quality through internal referrals or through any other source of acquisition. We also spoke a little about talent engagement. We determined that most of their departments right now are in quadrant two, which means that there is high attrition over here. There's low engagement. So that was another big focus area that we needed to address. We figured out the engagement and learning correlation. Whether people are getting more engaged if they learn more skills, or is that another fallacy or a fallacious assumption that we are making. And we figured out that yes, the data is saying something else. Okay, there is something that is not being populated here due to some network issues. We also did a deep dive on their DEI metrics, and we found that this is pretty much on par with what their expectations are. And we had an observation and recommendations page in terms of what we need to really do in order to address some of the challenges that we face. Now, after this,
Prasad,
we
just to kind of summarize that very quickly.
yeah,
So you basically looked at data that was already floating around within the system from various sources, put it together to kind of give a very comprehensive review of potentially what are the different challenges with employee retention. You
mhm,
link engagement with things like learning, attrition, So to give a more high-level view as well as to link up different things to see what kind of intelligence the organization could take away from there.
Mhm.
And you also then looked at making some recommendations on what they could do based on the data. What was the data telling them? That's what I'm taking as a top three takeaways from that.
Absolutely right.
Okay.
Absolutely right. So we had, once we did this, and the next phase of our engagement was quite specific. We focused on their Warsaw office, which was apparently not doing too well from an attrition standpoint. So that was where we had focused our efforts on, and we came up with this analysis, which we are talking about in today's session, which is a sentiment analysis. Let me just share it once again. Yeah, here we are. Now, we developed another app or a sister app or a subsidiary app called the Pulse Canvas. Now, the home screen is what we just saw right now. It's a distilled view of the executive dashboard. And the Pulse Canvas allows us the liberty to focus, to zoom in on any of those centers that we want. And in this case, it was Warsaw. And the objective of this Pulse Canvas was to figure out what is really or why is attrition high, or what is the real reason behind Warsaw doing what it is. So the executive dashboard tells us what is happening. The Pulse Canvas tells us why it is happening. So we took a bunch of comments from these various sources. You see a sentiment by feedback source. These are the various sources of the comments that we took, and some of the comments are here. Um, there were a total of about 150 comments, out of which 60% were negative comments, were deemed to be negative comments because of certain words that we used. 33% positive, and there were a few neutral as well. And the overall score that was assigned after analyzing these comments was a negative score of minus 14.14. So that tells us that things are not very hunky-dory in Warsaw. There is something that is not quite right in Warsaw. And we see that although there are a few positive aspects to the emotion, we see that there's a lot of praise and recognition. Some people are saying that the managers are supportive, they are very collaborative, but there is an equal amount of concern areas on poor management, outdated tools, poor leadership, slow processes, and favoritism. So this tells me that there's a pretty divided workforce when it came to their sentiment about the organization, right? And here you see that this can be further broken down by employee level. And this corroborates the fact that when there is poor management as an area of concern, or the main areas of concern, the sections of the population that are really affected are the mid-level and the junior level. I'm sure you'll agree with me on this, that when there is poor leadership involved, it is the middle and the junior level that seems to get affected the most. And this allows me to further drill down any of these areas of concern. If I go to poor management, uh, look at the emotion distribution. It says disappointment is the overriding emotion here, frustration and confusion, right?
Interesting.
And again, see, poor management, who are the most affected? The mid-level and the juniors.
Mm.
And this is across all departments, pretty much across all departments, right?
Mm.
So remember when I said that earlier, before the sentiment analysis exercise was done, the leadership in the center, going by their gut feel and their intuition, ascribed reasons of attrition due to extraneous circumstances. They said that there are other companies, other players in the market who are offering probably higher pay, and that's the reason why we are losing people. But this analysis made them think and made them pause for a minute and say that, hey, maybe there is something else that is happening within the organization that we need to look into first.
So there's also when you look at when you clicked on poor management, there was praise and so what is praise and recognition? That's basically the positives, is it?
These are the praise and recognition are the positives.
Positive.
Yeah, there could be a certain pockets where people have received praise and recognition, and they have mentioned that in their feedback, right?
Right.
But again, what is the overarching thing here? Look at the total number of comments here. And sentiment breakdown is 100% negative, even though there is a little bit of praise and recognition from somewhere. But the overarching sentiment when it comes to management
Hmm.
is negative, and it's it's quite significant.
Ah,
It's
now I
0.75.
get it. So you've actually, because you've clicked on poor management, the rest of the data is linked to poor management. Got it.
Absolutely
Got
correct.
it.
So if I wanted to look at praise and recognition, if I look at a supportive manager, there were 16 comments which talked about a supportive manager,
Mm,
right? But then overall, there is a there is something that is not quite right here.
mm. So maybe there are pockets where there are some positive, supportive managers that are there, but then potentially, by and large, the majority feels that they're not getting the right kind of leadership from their managers. Am
Ab-
I okay? Okay.
Absolutely. And then we worked with the leadership, and we came up with a recommended action plan. So before I go there, in addition to the leadership concerns, there were other equally important concerns about tools and processes. There was areas of concern being outdated tools, which again led to frustration, burnout,
Mm,
um, and a high workload because of repetitive tasks, because of the poor systems.
mm,
Uh, so we had identified that these two areas were the main areas of concern, and we came up with an action plan, which spoke about a 30 and a 60-day plan,
mm,
which first spoke about the systems overhaul. We needed to overhaul their legacy systems. We needed to modernize their IT setup on the whole,
mm,
even the workflows, the internal workflows. And more importantly, the initiative two, which is a leadership intervention. So here we talked about a 30 or 60-day plan, um, wherein we had to identify the top 5 managers with the highest concentration of poor management sentiment and um, come up with a personalized training plan on how do we improve this aspect of the organization.
mm. Now that is interesting for me.
Absolutely.
And you know
Yeah.
why?
Yeah. And this will open up a lot of avenues for a lot of auxiliary or associated programs. When you talk about executive coaching, when we talk about leadership development training, and we talk about their workflow processes.
Yep. Yep. Got it. Got it. Maybe I need to get in touch with Wayne. And then maybe
So
we can
this
have it in WhatsApp. I'm just joking. I'm sorry. Let's get back.
Yeah. So this again, as high as a view I can probably give you, given the restrictions imposed from a confidentiality perspective.
Yeah.
But I'll be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Yeah. Just a point that came to my mind as we were talking about this, Prasad. I think one important uh, input could be from the training teams because trainers get to hear a lot of informal feedback during training sessions. And I think that there is a huge gap there in terms of how that data can be captured and integrated into sentiment analysis because that sentiment that we hear during training programs is invaluable. So that's just a thought that came into my mind, and maybe something that you could also discuss with Wayne to see how to
Absolutely.
bring in if they have internal training happening. Because trainers are seen as a safe space, safe spot for people to share their sentiments and their frustrations. And so, anonymously, if that can be fed back into the system, I think that's a great, invaluable tool that we can look at.
Very true. And as I said earlier, the efficacy of an app like Catalyst depends largely to how strongly do we have a data collection mechanism. And not just a data collection mechanism, but a data validation mechanism. The data that we collect should be validated. It should not be garbage in. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
Great.
therefore, that's it.
Sue has a question on the chat box, Prasad. She says, may I
Uh-huh.
know how this works when the feedback sources are all coming from different tools and platforms?
Great question, Sue. Uh, and I think I hinted upon this right at the very beginning that Wayne is a classic example. When enterprises, this company had data existing in silos in various local hard disks and on in flat files, like flat files. By flat files, I mean Excel files. That's as basic as one can get. So we first had to get all of them together. And if you're technically if you're of a technical bent of mind, I can always spend some time with you later on to explain how I did that. But primarily, it was through building up of a relational database structure, wherein we created databases from those various data sources that we pulled from the organization. We created relational databases. There were about, I think, only for this particular application, we had about 10 different tables, uh, about more than probably 5 gigs of space that was taken up by these 10 tables. Building relationship between the various fields, validating the data that is existing there, and that is something that the tool does. It's called an ETL process. So long story short, yes, disparate data sources, getting it together onto a uniform platform, and then letting this app work its magic. That's
So,
what we did.
well, as an add-on, then, would organizations need to change how they gather the data going forward, or can they continue to use those legacy systems? Because I know a lot of organizations, people are kind of attached to their legacy systems. So, can that continue?
Yes, they can continue because this app, what we have developed, is quite powerful in its customization abilities. It can customize, it can adapt to any backend database that an organization has. But I would, Asha, your question about whether they can continue with what they're doing, I'd like to break it down into two parts. One is if it's a question of a legacy system, Excel files. If they're happy to continue using Excel files, yes, they can do so. Uh, uh, I would just want to add that if they can change the data gathering mechanism, what we spoke about a little earlier in terms of how well do you gather data? Do you have a mechanism for gathering training feedback, for example? If no, let's do that. I would encourage the organization to start doing that. Do
Yeah.
you have a mechanism to gather informal communication data? And people talking about or people orally talking about something which can lead to an improvement in the organization's processes. Do you have a way of capturing that? If no, let's try and explore how do we do that.
Got
So
it.
it has to work on both sides. There has to be a willingness from the organization to change the way they gather data.
Yeah.
um, and there has to be a willingness in order to share the data with an external consultant like myself.
Got it. And I guess just going back to Sue's question then is yes, Sue, pretty much if we have, and Sue and I used to work, we were colleagues together for a long time, many years ago. But we know how the reliance that organization we worked with had on Excel systems. So that I think, yeah, to answer your question, Sue, yes, it can be brought together. I hope that
Yes.
answers your question, Sue. If it does, just give me a quick thumbs up, please. Thank you. And I see Shubha has her hand raised. So Shubha, did you have a question?
Yeah. Uh, so the large organization or the mid-sized organization, uh, where I see is these kind of feedbacks does exist, right? So I went into the details of it and I see that it's giving very specific and more insight to the organization. But how is it going to help the organization uh, in a gain share model, Prasad? What I mean is just analyzing this data and just leaving at that, or is it going to add more value, return on investment in some way?
Okay. So help me, if I've understood your question correctly, Shubha, is you're asking primarily from a ROI perspective? Because I'm not sure I understood what you meant by gain share.
Yeah, that's right. See,
ROI.
looking at
ROI, is that what
these,
you, okay.
yes.
Well, yeah, that's another good question to have out there. And to be honest, I really cannot attach a dollar value if you want to know whether an organization will benefit directly by deploying such an application. That is a little difficult to say. But then, what is the kind of value that you, as an HR professional, would attach to something like this, which will give you this kind of insight? Now, if you recollect, during the first webinar when we had done a little bit more of a deep dive into the app as a whole, we spoke about things like which channel of acquisition is proving to be more beneficial, right? Which, like, we saw that internal referrals, that channel, people who had joined the organization through internal referrals were were returning a more quality in terms of their performance to the organization, and there were less attrition from people who had joined in from internal referrals. So I'm sure that we can crunch the numbers and assign a dollar value to that, saying that, hey, this is what the ROI is from that perspective. And
That's a great point, Prasad,
yeah,
because just coming back to that again, if you think about the amount of money that organizations typically spend with hiring an external recruitment consultant, but then I remember the data very clearly showed that actually there was people who had joined through external consultants actually were quitting. There was higher attrition in that group, which
and
means
lesser quality.
lesser quality. So which obviously clearly means that we are spending a lot of money on them, but we're not getting an ROI on that investment. So I think just to kind of go back to Shubha's question, yeah, that way we can look at it in terms of what is the ROI. And I think but that's again a good piece of work that with the help of consultant like yourself, actually HR can start to work on ROI for other parts of their functioning as well.
Very true. We can even include to our training in this ages, because if we were to ascertain what is the return of a particular training program on the workforce, whether will that lead to a higher productivity, for example, or does a particular training lead to more qualitative output of from a developer? Again, I don't know. I'm just thinking,
Yeah. No, I think the possibilities are endless, actually. Yeah.
yes,
Shubha, does that answer your question for you?
It does. I think the key mantra of productivity, linking to the productivity, nowadays everybody sees productivity as a big thing, right? When you're linking something to productivity and when you're linking to your attrition data, obviously that translate to your business results,
Got
right?
it.
Hence, HR contributing not only just the data analysis, but it is converting into the financial results for the company. I think that will be a great achievement
Yeah.
in
yeah. I
my
think I
view.
think that's a great point you just made. I think this app or such data science applications will transform HR from being just a function, a support function, into a more partnership, kind of a business
Part.
partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah, that transition needs to happen.
Yeah. Prasad, we have another question from Lena on the chat box, and I think it's
Sure.
actually a couple of different questions there. She says, how long does it take to analyze the data for an organization? That's her first question. And the second question she says is, what's the size of an organization that can use Catalyst? In other words, is it only for mid to large organizations?
Thanks, Lena. So let me take your first question, which is how long does it take to analyze the data for an organization? There's no set fixed time period. It depends on it depends on how the data is organized. Like if the client has if the organization has everything organized, everything in place, then it would take probably half the time that it's taken that's taken with the Wayne Enterprises. If I were to use Wayne as a Wayne Enterprises as a benchmark, it has taken probably 6 months of study and back-end data data gathering uh, to arrive at to where we are today with Wayne Enterprises. So, but if let's say if you have an organization which is far more organized in terms of data gathering and data repository, it'll probably take less than half that amount of time. So it all depends, basically. It all depends on how well organized the organization is from a data perspective.
The data, yeah. And then the second one is the size of the organization that can use Catalyst.
Regardless, Catalyst is not dependent on the size of the organization because this app can be scaled up or down, horizontally, vertically, however way you please to cater for any size of the organization.
Mm.
And it can be customized to any extent that you want. Now, the metrics that you saw in today's demo need not be the only metrics, right? Catalyst is flexible enough to look at any kind of metric that the organization deems important. It can be changed midway from a maybe today, Wayne is focusing on attrition, but tomorrow it might change its focus onto something more financial, for example. And Catalyst has the ability to spin on a dime and make those changes accordingly.
Wonderful. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Because we have some very seasoned HR people with us. We have Sunny, Carol, Ariel, Vincy. They're all extremely seasoned HR professionals. So I'm curious to know if you have any comments, any of you. Well, I hope this was useful for all of you. I hope you got uh, some value from the time that you chose to come and spend with us today. And I know that this is your lunch hour, so I really am very, very appreciative of you taking the time to be with us. Like I said, I hope this was useful. I hope you it kind of got you thinking about things. We are here for you anytime if you want to come back, chat with us. Maybe if you want to set up a call with Prasad, please let us know and we will help facilitate that for you. Even if you just want to have a chat with Prasad to see, to have any more uh, potentially, questions that are specific to your organization that you don't want to bring up in a public forum, completely understood. Let us know and we will help facilitate that conversation with Prasad. And any other way we can help you with this very important, I think, aspect of our work, we are here to help you with that as well. So thank you so much, and let us know. Give us your feedback, please. Anything that we can help you with, anything we can support you with, let us know. Kana has shared the evaluation form for this session. Please take a couple of minutes to fill that up. It will be very useful again for us. Okay. Thank you, and we will see you around. Kana, we can stop the recording now.